was only 7 days earlier, when Australia watched with smiles on their faces as Rafael Nadal won his first Australian Open. Those smiles soon turned to scared and saddened faces as the temperature pushed the mercury to 47 degrees and the wind grew and became Satan's bellows. Kangaroos had deserted the fields and smoke rose high over the hills. Then the hot, fierce wind changed direction and unleashed hellfire. No warning and no time to flee, the orange sky turned dark like night and embers like comets fell from the sky. A wall of fire so high and so hot obliterated anything that stood in its path, and dreams turned to ashes and rubble. Those who did survive stood silent in shock or crouched over in tears, absolutely gutted, unable to understand or rationalize what had happened. Charcoal and sweat painted the faces of the fighters, from seasoned veterans to new recruits, but their hearts were charred with loss. Images burnt into the minds of the rescuers of flesh and material as one, the remains of those who tried to flee by car. House by house, the sheer loss of life, the unspeakable as hundreds found dead, indescribable suffering and pain. The fire trucks like toy water guns to a bonfire, the helicopters scooped from the dams, but the water evaporated before it hit the ground. Black Friday and Ash Wednesday paled, destruction of communities equal to an atomic bomb, the loss of family, friends, pets and livestock incomprehensible. Kinglake, Strathewen, Marysville, Coligny, St Andrews and others now lie blackened with a grey landscape like a cemetery of headstones, the sheer loss of life a tragedy unimaginable. Mustering a spirit handed down through the generations from the Anzacs, Australians sharing the pain band together, from cities to country towns, joined by compassion. Farmers in drought with little to spare, in an act of comradeship, send fodder and feed for the stock that's left. The elderly and poor, with barely enough to eat themselves, open their purses and wallets to share. Mums and dads combine with their kids, sending blankets, clothing and toys, and kneel by their children's beds in prayer at night. The army pitches in to lend a hand, and a tent city springs from the earth to give the survivors a place to call home. As the reality of the tragedy begins to sink in, questions will be asked and fingers pointed, but nothing will bring back the loss or the souls. A mass murderer or murderers will be free, but the guilt and shame will haunt them for life, and the phoenix will close its claws on them eventually. The survivors will rebuild from the devastation, supported by their fellow Australians, but we will never forget the day Victorians fled.